All right. Good morning, gentlemen. All right. Welcome to another Friday Blackbird workshop here. And let me see here. Let's get the website up. There we go. All right. So let me also finish taking a look, see who's in the room. And all right, I do recognize all the names. So, yeah, I'll forego asking about the workshop introduction there. And yeah, that's right. It is Friday the 13th. It's kind of surprising how often Friday the 13th shows up through any given year. So I never really noticed, yeah, how many Friday the 13ths there were until I started doing these workshops. And of course, I'm always, labeling the dates of these workshops here. So, yeah. So hopefully Friday the 13th is nullified by tomorrow's Saturday, Valentine's Day. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. All right. So I do have one emailed in question here to get things started. Let's see here. Yeah, it was emailed in by Milroy. I don't see him here yet, but that's okay. We do have recordings, so all right. Let's see here. Anything else? No, I don't think I have anything else here. Let's see here. Well, okay. So before I get started with Melroy's question, let me take a look and see what Sam here has real quick here. All right. To summarize, Sam's question is about, yeah, the age-old issue of NinjaTrader and disconnects, and NinjaTrader not being able to reestablish, not being able to, what's a good way to phrase this? NinjaTrader not being able to reassociate all the live orders that it had before the disconnect with the orders, after the reconnect. And so, Sam, as far as I know, that NinjaTrader still has not solved that problem. So, not as far as I know. But again, we're not the experts on that. So that question definitely needs to go to NinjaTrader and ask them, because they're the only ones who can solve it. So it sounds like, oops, didn't mean to double click on that. Yeah, so obviously, it sounds like you have a pretty good understanding of what is going on here, but just in case, it's, I guess instinctively, I can understand instinctively, people just assume that the strategy has all the software built into it and the strategy manages everything. But actually, strategies only do half the work of, well, yeah, strategies don't really only do half the work here. And so to explain what I mean by half the work here, if you could just go to Blackbird and go to the introduction page here. If we scroll down, there you go. There's a little, summary there of what does a strategy actually do there, right? And NinjaTrader does all of the communication and tracking of everything. So the strategy doesn't track anything. NinjaTrader tracks all the order connections and everything, and then tells the strategy, what's going on. Where is this order's price currently, right? So strategies are kind of like, this is going to be a bad analogy. I'm really bad at analogies, but a strategy is kind of like an infant that's reliant on its mother, and NinjaTrader being the platform, right? That is definitely the mother, and does all of the intricate work there. So, yeah. So hopefully, I've been saying this for more than 10 years. Hopefully, at some point, NinjaTrader figures out a way to reassociate all of the live orders with the order IDs, with the orders, that a strategy, is managing. So, yeah. And then once they can figure that out, then disconnects won't be an issue ever again there. So, yeah. But in any case, yeah, if you wanted to kind of, read a simple summary of what does a strategy do and manage versus what is NinjaTrader responsible for, right? There's a graphical image there to help explain, what each component does. So, yeah. All right. So, yeah, there we go. I'll get Sam's question out of the way first. There. And all right. So now let's move on to that emailed in question here. All right. So I did have to email Melroy back to get some clarification on a couple of things here. So, and mainly it was the stop loss. Yeah, it was the stop loss part there. So this has been tweaked a little bit based on his responses here. But, all right. So, we have two different setups here. So a lot of people still kind of, for the lack of another terminology, people still kind of refer to a Blackbird setup as like an ATM there, right? And so this is going to have three order sets here. All right, so we have order set A, order set B, and order set C, right? And that being the number of contracts there, not trades, but contracts. So, all right. So let's see here. So the profit target there, pretty straightforward. So it's an 80 and then a 155 here. So as typical, the question really relies on setting up the stop losses here. So we do have a break even at 20 ticks of profit. there. And then, let's see here. Yeah, so the order set A, I should say, yeah, order set A just has a break even, call it good. But then order set B and C will have a trailing stop loss there. So here's kind of the key is move that stop loss every 5 ticks there until an additional 20 ticks of profit is reached there. So there's the so that's kind of the key to that question there. And then moving on to part 2, the second ATM here, the key. So really, the key component to this question, excuse me, the key component. Hold on, let me take a drink. Sorry. All right. Hopefully I got that frog out of my throat. All right, as I'm trying to say here, the key component here to this second setup here is the scaling in here. All right, this last part here. So adding another contract every 40 ticks of profit there. All right. So, all right. So with that, let's open up Blackbird here and start building. All right. So we have 3 order sets. So we're going to build out the first one here as much as possible. And then we'll use the copy feature here to copy, right, to make B and then make C, right? All right, so the profit target, 80 ticks. So let's go to our profit targets and we'll just use the tick base profit target. There we go. I'll just grab the 50 and then open up the menu there and adjust it to 80 like so. There we have it. All right, easy part's done. Now, all right, stop loss, 60 ticks. All right, so let's go to our stop loss here. And also we'll go to the tick based one there. And this, remember, if you remember down here, right, the stop loss does have a break even. So I'm gonna use this as a starting point here. I'll grab the 40 tick. It does have trailing, but it also has a break even. That's what I want there, right? So I'll grab that one. And so now let's open up our stop loss there. And we'll adjust this to 80. There we go. 80 ticks. Oh, wait, no, sorry. 60 ticks. All right, and let's move this off to the side there. All right, so we have our 60 tick stop loss there. Now let's go to the break even, right? So let's go to the trailing actions. All right, so we do have, right, a trailing component here, and but let's see here. Yeah, so I'm deciding, should I delete it now? Because when I copy, right, in order to make order set B and C, right, when I make a copy, I won't have a trailing rule. but no big deal. We'll add this back very easily there. All right. All right, so it's just a simple break even at 20 ticks there. So let's adjust the name here. There we go, adjust the name so it's correct. So break even at 20 ticks of profit. So the first thing we need to do is open up our trigger here, right? Because we can see it says after 30 ticks of profitable movement, right? So we want that to go down to 20 ticks, like so. Knock that down. There we go. All right, so we have the 20 tick profit there, and then remember, originally this is a break even plus 1, and we're taking out that plus 1, so we need to go to the action. Right, we can see the action says entry price plus 1, so we're going to take out that plus 1. So click on that, right, and here's our plus 1 in the offset, so we'll knock that down to 0, and now it's just break even. So and all right, that does it. So now let's move on to order set B and C. So the other two trades there. All right. So again, we're as most people do, the stop losses are set the same, 60 ticks there. But this time the profit targets are going to be 155 ticks. All right. So let's make our first copy here. So we'll copy A. There we go. And now we can go in to the profit target and go to the options tab there. And then we'll adjust this 80 ticks to our 155. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. All right, so now the trailing component here. All right, so we're gonna move every 5 ticks, but until there's an additional 20 ticks of profit there. All right, so let's open up our stop loss. And hold on. Let me get this chart out of the way. Oops, wrong thing. There we go. Let's move that chart up a little higher there. Okay. All right, so open up our stop loss. Go to trailing actions. And we're going to add another trailing roll there. Right. Now, what's typical almost every time is when you do have trailing here is, right, you don't want the trailing to kick in before the break even. So your triggers are almost always going to match each other exactly there. Yeah, this is one of those cases where our triggers will match. So let's go and put in that interval there. And put in our 20 ticks, like so. All right, so we're using the interval trigger there. And use the ticks of movement there. All right, so there we go. So now we can see they match up exactly, right? After 20 ticks of movement and after 20 ticks of movement there. All right, so the action is where we're going to determine how often does that stop loss move or trail there, right? So let's go in here, open this up, and Um, let's see. So this is a 60 tick stop loss. So we're going to put in minus 60 there. All right. So we're trailing 60 ticks behind essentially the highest high that the last price ever makes there. Right. Um, so, yeah. All right. So that's our 60 tick, because this is a 60 tick stop loss, right? We're going to trail behind 60 ticks. Now, as far as how often does that stop loss move, the increments there, that's set up in the repeat here. Let's see here. So we can do the math in our head here. So if we're moving every 5 ticks, we're moving the stop loss in 5 tick increments, 5 tick steps. But for only 20 more ticks of profit there, so that means there's only going to be 4 steps, right? So the easiest thing to set up here is let's just do a repeat for X number of times, all right? And so there. So we know we have 4 steps, right? 20 ticks of profitable movement divided by 5, right? That is 4. And then as far as moving every 5 ticks, right? That repeat there, every 5, it's not going to be bars. We're going to change this to ticks of movement. So every time the market, moves more than 5 ticks, right? So this trailing rule, it repeats when the market moves, 5 ticks at a time there, or moves more than 5 ticks. Yeah. So, all right. And, yeah. So there you have it. Just to be clear, the key to getting this 5 tick stepping of the stop loss or 5 tick incremental movement, only for 20 more ticks of profit there, that was all completed in the repeat here, right? So we know that there's only four times that the stop loss can move, and then use the repeat every, so the repeat every is saying, okay, the market has to move a minimum of 5 ticks before we move our stop loss. And all right, yeah, that does it for order set B. And so the other two, right, so B and C are both exactly the same. So then we just go to our next order set and just copy from B. And there we have it. So now B and C are both the same. Profit targets are the same. Stop losses are the same. All right. So that would be ATM 1. And so now at this point, you could hit the save and close and then save this out as something, whatever you want to call it there. All right. And then open it back up. And then, yeah. So when you hit the save and close, it's going to close this window. So you have to open it back up. I'll just hit the OK button. Open, right, Blackbird back up. And then we would do a save as. Right, do a save as. And then give it whatever name you want for this second configuration here. Right. So, all right. So moving on to the second configuration. All right, so everything is pretty much the same. So still 60 ticks stop loss, and our take profit is 80 ticks. Our break even still is a break even after 20 ticks of profit, right? But then again here, here is a subtle difference here. All right, so now the stop loss will keep trailing every 10 ticks, right? Up until 20 ticks of profit there. All right, so every 10 ticks. So to make that adjustment, let's see, actually that. All right, yeah, so I'm going to assume that this is for order set A as before, and this is going to be for order set B and C here. All right, yeah. So, because this is almost the same as this, just a little adjustment there. All right, so what I'll do is I'm going to delete, actually, you know what, we'll just delete all of C. Delete that order set, and then we'll go into our stop loss and go to the trailing actions tab here, and our trailing here, we're going to go into the repeat there, and again, just doing the math, actually this gets knocked up to every 10 ticks of market movement, but then our repeat just drops down to 2. All right. So yeah, we can see if it's moving 10 ticks, then there's only 2 times that stop loss is going to move before that 20 ticks of additional profit is reached there. All right. So there we go. Just had to do a little adjustment to the repeat there, and we're done. Yeah. And so now we can go and make a copy of B, and there we have it. So now we have our adjusted stop loss there, right? So yeah, we can see, right? The repeat here says 2 times, right? So there's our 10 tick market movement, and the repeat set to 10s, right? So everything was copied exactly. So, all right. Now, here is the real question, or the more important question here for this second configuration. There is adding, right, scaling in a trade or scaling in a contract every 40 ticks in profit there. So up to 6 minis or 10 micros. All right. So based on this, that's you have. So Blackbird will not just keep adding contracts indefinitely with some kind of automatic, programmatic method there. So we have deliberately set it up so that your order sets determine how many times you can scale in, right? So there's no programmatic way to do that. You just have to create an order set for each possible time, that you want to scale in an additional contract there. Okay. And let's see here. Yeah. So there's no stop loss or any other information provided there. So let's see. So I'm just going to copy C. I'm going to copy C. Since we don't have a profit target, I'm just going to delete the profit target and make this a runner, right? Yeah, make this a runner here. And then for the stop loss, right? Obviously, we're past the break even part here, right? So obviously, yeah, these aren't moving to break even. So let's cancel that, but we'll keep the trailing part. Yeah, we'll keep the trailing there, and yeah, I'm gonna assume that probably the trailing should kick in immediately there, right? So let's get rid of the trigger here. And let's see where, there we go. Set it to none. There. Set it to none. So that way the trailing kicks in immediately. And there's nothing about, stepping, but, just, I guess, just for the sake of learning here, what we'll do is I'm going to adjust the repeat to indefinitely. So I'm not going to limit, how many times this trailing will trail. I'm just going to make it trail forever. But I'll keep this 10 ticks of incremental stepping, right? So the stop loss will trail after every 10 ticks of market movement there. So I'll keep that component in, like so. All right. Okay, now we got the stop loss and the profit target figured out. So now back to, okay, how do we set this order up so that it only scales in after 40 ticks of profit there, right? So we're going to go into the entry order and go to the placement, all right? So the placement acts as a delay, right? So it's delaying the entry, or it's delaying the submission of this market order to NinjaTrader based on some other requirement, right? And that requirement is going to be this 40 ticks of profit here. Right? So let's go to the interval and we'll just plug in, right, 40 ticks right there, right? And there we have it. So, so basically this market order is waiting until the market has reached 40 ticks of profit, and then it'll submit this market order, right? Now, one thing that's critical when you use the place is you always have to use the cancel there, right? Because what happens if, this trade completely backfires and boom, the market does a 180 and hits your stop losses there, right? Obviously, you don't want to be you don't want this market order waiting to keep trying to scale in after that point, right? So we're going to set up a cancel here. And for this cancel, we're going to go to the advanced tab. So we're not going to cancel based on an interval. So let's delete that trigger. Let's go over here and we're going to cancel this scale in based on an order status, right? If when an order has changed, right? And so which order do we want to monitor? Well, it's the stop losses, right? So if stop loss A, right, it doesn't matter, right? All these stop losses are the same. So it doesn't matter which one we select. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, we could select A, B, or C, but, A just seems to be a more natural selection there. And so if the stop loss is filled, right, we know the trade backfired. And so that is when we cancel this scale in order here. So And sometimes just to go beyond, this question, just to go beyond this question, quite often, most people will not scale in after some profit target is reached as well, sometimes, right? So if that applies to your situation, right, where if a profit target's hit or some other, if a stop loss is hit or if some other profit target's hit, then don't try and scale in anymore, right? So you might also want to add a second order status changed there, and you can monitor whatever other profit target, so I guess, just for there, let's put it in C, and we'll check when C gets filled, right? And then always remember, adjust the mode. So obviously you're not going to get a stop loss and a profit target filled at the same time, right? So the mode is going to be any, right? So it doesn't matter is if any of these conditions are true, cancel this scale in here, all right? So it doesn't matter if it's the stop loss or if it's the profit target, right? So that's typically what most cancellations will consist of is, check to see if a stop loss got hit, and most likely check to see if one of these other profit targets hit. But that's not the case for this question here. So I'm just going to delete that profit target being filled, and we're just going to keep if the stop loss is filled. Right, just keep that one component there. All right. There, yeah. So that set up that requirement for one of the scale-in contracts there, right? So at this point, all right, we have our place and we have our cancel set up. So now at this point, we can make a copy of D. All right, and so E will not scale in until, right, we double this amount. So now we just do some math and increment, how far does the market need to move before, right, before this second scale-in contract is submitted there, right? So there we go. So now after 80 ticks, right, we click OK. And now we can go to copy. We'll copy E there. And just keep adjusting our placement setting here. Right, there we go. So plug in 120. And yeah, so obviously 120 is about as far as we can go, because then ultimately our 155, right, the next one would be at 160. All right, so if you made another one here, all right, so this one add another 40, so that'd be 160, right? And so at this point, 160, so now we've surpassed the profit targets for these. So I'm just going to stop at that point, right? So now it's just continuing to add, right, as many scale-in opportunities as you want there. All right, so yeah. So if it's a maximum of 6 or 10, yeah, you just keep adding as many as you want. And of course, you can up the number of contracts, which, yeah, I did not add up that number of contracts to 2 here. Yeah, because remember, yeah, so remember the first order set has 2 contracts there. Yeah, so 2 contracts for A, and then B and C are 1 contract. So there we go. All right. Yeah. And so again, for the scale in orders here, right, you can increment those, right? So that would be 6 total, right? If I got rid of this, then that would be 6 minis there, or whatever. Doesn't matter if it's minis or micros, right? So if it's 6 or 10, right, just add the number of scale-in contracts that you want, to get to that maximum possible amount there. There. All right, so I'm just gonna knock those down to 2, like so. And I'll add this. I'll add this 4th one back in, just in case. There. All right, and that concludes it. So there we have it. So let's see here. So since this one is fairly large, and it's not really complex, but yeah, a little bit of complexity here. But it is pretty large here. So I will save this out there. And All right. Well, I guess that kind of does it for a name. Yeah, that'll do it for now. All right. Oh, there we go. So we have this one saved out for today. All right. Let me see if there's any follow-up questions on this. Yeah, before moving on, let's see here. All right. Oh, there's Melroy. All right. Melroy's in the room. So, all right. Yeah, I don't see any follow-up questions on this. So, all right. Yeah, so Melroy, I think you already know the drill. You can just email support and ask to upload the recording. And that way you can see everything. Yeah, that way you can see the entire both of these configurations being built. Yeah. There. Yeah, so just ask for the recording to be uploaded to the raw channel. And yeah, then you can watch it over the weekend at your leisure. So, all right, let's see here. So, let's see here. Sam, all right, yeah, Sam was commenting here. He's got 50 bots on CTrader with no issue. Yeah, I know it definitely is one of NinjaTrader's Achilles heel, you know. So yeah, hopefully, if enough people complain, you know, when it comes to software companies, the squeaky complaint usually gets not the oil, but the most number of programmers to fix the problem. So, yeah. So, yeah. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, as far as when it gets uploaded, I have no control over that. So, yeah. So just email it in, and the only thing I do know is it does take it takes what, a while for these videos to get uploaded. You know, they are obviously a 2-hour video is pretty darn large as far as file size goes. But what takes the longest is YouTube. So YouTube takes, the last I heard, YouTube takes anywhere from an hour to 2 hours to process a video before they make it available. So, and that was years ago. Yeah, it was years ago. So I don't know if YouTube has added more computing power to processing, which would take less time, you know, or who knows, YouTube's maybe with AI and everything like that, the processing time might actually take longer nowadays. I don't know, but my point is, yeah, YouTube has always taken the longest time. That's the longest component before a video is readily available for the public to view, is their processing time and cataloging and whatever else they do. So, yeah. So, all right. Well, let's see who is left in the room. All right. Well, just a couple gentlemen left. And let's see here. Oh, okay. Wow. We're almost at the 1 hour mark. Wow. Yeah, I didn't really think it would take that long to get through this question here, but it is what it is. Yeah. All right. So I will hang around at least until the top of the hour before closing up. All right. So if you have some Blackbird questions, go ahead and get them in there. If I don't see any more Blackbird questions by the time we get to the top of the hour, then I'll close up shop for the day. So. Yeah, you bet, Charles. I mean, that's exactly what these workshops are for. So, yeah, when Jeremy and I, first opened up shop and put Bloodhound on the market, it was very apparent that we were going to need live training sessions like this to help people through. So, yeah, and I gotta say, it wasn't all my idea. I got the basis for these workshops from NinjaTrader, because NinjaTrader also used to have, this is like more than maybe 10 years ago or so. NinjaTrader used to have live sessions. They weren't quite workshops like this. They had a rehearsed script that they all read from. Yeah, they had a workshop for each specific component here of NinjaTrader. They had a rehearsed script. So if you're learning about, how to set your charts up, they read their script, went through that first, and then they opened it up to questions, to Q&A, so people could ask more detailed questions that they may not have covered. Yeah. So yeah, that kind of seeded the idea that we definitely needed an open workshop for Bloodhound, and then of course by extension for Blackbird. Yeah. All right, let's see here. It looks like maybe Melroy has a question. Yeah, so Melroy's, has I guess a common thought on traders' minds here. And let's see, trying to find a good spot in the market. Yeah, okay, we'll kind of use this here. We'll use this as my setup here. All right, so let's say, you remarkably get in, on this bar here, and you're going long. And I swear, I wish Ninja would fix these icons. Is that the arrow? Yeah. All right, there we go. And you're going long, right? You reach some kind of maximum profit, and then the market pulls back and close out the trade there. So no, Blackbird doesn't check for those drawdowns at some some high watermark. So yeah, this would be commonly referred to as like the local or what a high watermark for a specific trade. All right, so the high watermark for this specific trade here, or what is it? There is a term for that, right? The reverse of this would be the max adverse excursion, and there is an inverse term, which NinjaTrader unfortunately does not calculate. Last I checked, but anyways, yeah. So the question is, so once if the market pulls back from that high watermark of that trade, yeah, can you close it out? So no, yeah, I guess it anything can be calculated, but I think the simple answer is, since NinjaTrader doesn't calculate this when you're in a profitable direction, right? They only calculate the MAE, max adverse excursion, right? Which means you're losing money. So yeah, so if NinjaTrader would calculate that, it's probably something we could add in, but that you're just overcomplicating it. So even if NinjaTrader did, we probably would not add that because it's just overcomplicating, the product. That's exactly what stop losses are for. So, yeah. So in your question, yeah, can Blackbird be told if profit starts to reverse, by X amount, yeah, then close the trade? Well, that's exactly what a trailing stop loss does, right? So yeah, so if you have a predetermined get out point, let's say right there, right? So the market pulls back from there to there. Well, that's what a stop loss is for. Just trail your stop loss to that point. There, let's set this up. Yeah, right. So yeah, so if this was your high water mark at the moment, then figure out how many ticks of loss from that point are you willing to deal before closing out the trade, right? So your stop loss would be down here somewhere, right? And then as the market moves up, right, and then once the market gets to that point, right, you would just move your stop loss up to there, and then if the market pulls back and hits your stop loss. Yeah. So we're not going to overcomplicate Bloodhound by trying to do a calculation from the high watermark of a trade and then close out the trade. I mean, that's exactly what stop losses are doing. So, yeah. So, all right, let's see. All right, we got one more question here. Oh, Melroy, I have heard all the funny trading ideas ever. So I don't think you have anything new to show me or anything new to explain to me. I've heard all kinds of ideas. So let's see here. All right, let me read the question. Yeah, all right. So next question here is basically about, can the profit target be moved? Absolutely. Yep. So you just have to figure out what the criteria is for moving a profit target here. So let's open up what we have here. Yeah, so let's take one of these. Yeah, take one of these, the 55 tick one. And you'll notice, right, there is a trailing actions tab right there. And so all you gotta do is just enable the trailing actions there. And let's see here. So the evaluation is, right, we're not pulling this profit target closer to price. We're actually going to be moving, right, we're going to be moving this profit target further from price. So we do need to change the mode there. So, and then add a trailing roll. And yeah, so the tricky part is figuring out what condition is, right, moving that profit target there. And then of course, just like the same way you would set up a stop loss, right, you have to go in and set up your action here. And so let's see, for profit targets, right, they're always based on the entry price. So we have to change our base point being calculated from, right, the calculation point, right? So we'll change it to the entry price, and then you want 200, so we can just put in 200, right? So 200 from the entry price, like so, right? And if we go back to the options tab here, right, looking at the initial placement, what does it say? There you go, entry price plus 55 ticks, right? So this is using the entry price, and then we're just adding 55 ticks to that. Okay, so when we go to the trailing actions tab, and then go to the action, right, this menu is the same here. Well, I picked OCO entry price, so we could go back to average entry price. There we go. And then add 200 ticks. There. There. And let's see here. All right, yeah, so the follow-up question is, can you set a profit target to a moving average? Yep, absolutely. Just like, this menu here is universal for entry orders, right? Profit targets or stop losses. So whatever you can do, however you can trail a stop loss, you can also trail your profit targets. Same thing. So let's just add that in here. Let's see here. There, so that's moved to 200 ticks. And so for this, now I would imagine that a moving average is going to be on the wrong side of the market. So we'll do something that seems a little more fail-proof. Yeah, I'll go with that term, fail-proof. So let's, follow one of the Bollinger Bands, right? So we can go into action here, go to the move to, and then change our mode to indicator value. So actually, here's a common one, is, if you're getting in, if you're getting in on a pullback, or if you're having a counter trend trade, right? Quite often people will set their profit targets to the swing high, right? So so you can move that to the swing high. And so what this would do is, well, if the market keeps going against you and makes a lower swing high, right, then you could move your profit target to the lower swing high. So, right, obviously your profit target is not going to move to the higher swing high because that's technically impossible. So if you think about it. All right, so anyways, going back to indicator value here. So let's search for the Bollinger. There we go. So you can find the Bollinger. Of course, set whatever standard deviation you want there. And then, so for a long trade, right, we could have the profit target follow the upper band for a long trade, and then follow the lower band for a short trade. So set it up just like that, right? There. And then the other thing is, since we're following some indicator, then just like with the stop losses, you want to keep following that indicator. So set your repeat to indefinitely, right? And since this is an indicator, right, indicators only update once per bar. So we just leave this on repeat once per bar, right? Obviously the indicator is not going to move on a tick by tick basis. So this is just wastes CPU calculations there. Yeah, so when you're following an indicator, always just leave it on once per bar. There we have it. So. All right, let's see. It looks like we can have another follow-up to this question. Yeah, so this follow-up here is, yeah, can you set an order, doesn't matter if it's profit target or stop loss, can you set it to a moving average that's on another time frame? Yes. So Blackbird doesn't put indicators on other time frames. So the secondary time frame that you want to put your moving average on, that has to be built into the indicator. So the indicator has to call up that time frame itself. Yeah, so Blackbird, yeah, does not place, let's see, let me rephrase it a different way. Blackbird itself is not a multi-time frame strategy. So Blackbird will not call up other time frames so that you can manipulate indicators or place indicators in other time frames. So the indicator itself needs to have that built into itself to calculate that moving average on another time frame. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. So if you wanted to follow, a moving average there, and we'll pull up the EMA as Melroy's using as an example. Pull up the EMA. Yeah, so you would need a custom EMA where you can set up the alternate time frame that you want this EMA to be calculated on. So yeah, so that's what I mean by that secondary time frame needs to be built into the moving average itself. And you'll have settings here where you can pick what that other time frame would be that you wanted to calculate on. Yeah. So, let's see here. So Myra is asking, will that be an input in Bloodhound? Yeah, I'm not sure how a comparison solver in Bloodhound, what that has to do with Blackbird. Yeah, yeah, I Bloodhound has nothing to do with Blackbird's orders or placing a Blackbird order. All right, just to be clear, Blackbird cannot set a order or control an order in Blackbird. Right, Bloodhound just provides signals. So. Yeah, so the I guess another simple way of phrasing this, while Bloodhound does have the ability to pull in secondary timeframes and calculate a solver on that secondary time frame, Blackbird does not have that ability. So no. Yeah. Let's see here. All right, I think, yeah, all right, so it looks like we're at least done for the moment with the follow-ups on this. Let's see here. Yeah, all right, I'm not going to save that in there. There. Let's see. All right, looks like Charles has a question for me next here. Thanks, Charles. So they do, yeah, max favorable excursion. That's what I was trying to think of earlier. Right, okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good that NinjaTrader has the max favorable excursion. That was the other term I was trying to think of. Yeah, that's funny. I literally, I think I just did a Google search to find that, like back in January, I think it was, or maybe it was back in December. And Google said NinjaTrader couldn't do that. So it was, yeah, that's what you get for, trusting AI. AI, yeah, definitely hands out plenty of incorrect answers. But yeah, that time I decided I would trust Google's AI to give me the correct answer when I asked, if NinjaTrader did calculate Max favorable excursion. Yeah, I couldn't think of the term even back in December. So maybe that was my mistake, is I didn't put the exact correct terminology in. I was just trying to explain to Google search what I was looking for. So, yeah, I guess that was half on me for getting the wrong answer back. Yeah, definitely the answers you get back are only as good as the questions you ask of AI. So, yeah, but all right, yeah, yeah, MFE doesn't get asked about a lot. Everybody focuses on MAE, adverse excursion. So the MFE is easy to forget. But still, going back to what I was saying earlier, to correct myself. So yeah, so NinjaTrader does track that loss and profits, but still, we're not going to overcomplicate Blackbird by trying to do something a more complicated way. So if you have determined, how much you're willing to allow the market to take away from your maximum profit, a trailing stop loss is exactly for that purpose. Yeah. So, yeah. Um, yeah, okay, right. Good distinction there. I know when you get into statistics, everything is so specific. Yeah. Are you right? Are you talking about just a particular trade, or are you aggregating all the trades together? Yeah. So end trade drawdown. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. Where are we at? Wow. All right. Well, we are approaching the 1.5 hour mark. So there we go. That's a little more typical for Blackbird. So, all right. Yeah. At this point, let's see. We've lost another person in the room. So now we're down to 4. And technically 5, but Bob doesn't count because Bob just sits quietly in the background. Bob already knows everything, so Bob, already knows everything, so he never asks any questions anymore. So we're down to 4. So at this point, I'm going to start the timer again, gentlemen, and I'll give everybody at least 5 minutes. And Bob says almost. Oh, quit it, Bob. All right, being modest. So yeah, I'll give everybody, about 5 minutes or so. Maybe I'll hang around till about the bottom of the hour. And if I don't see any more Blackbird questions by then we'll wrap it up and call it a Friday. That way I can get back to other job duties I got here. So let's see. All right. Well, yeah, I guess now is a good time to go heat up your cup of coffee or whatever while I'm waiting for the next question to come in. So, all right, guys. So, yeah, I'm just going to mute my microphone until the next question comes in or I decide to wrap it up. All right, guys. All right, gentlemen. Yeah, I think we're done for today. So I don't see anybody new jumping in, and I think you guys have all asked your questions there. And yeah, a little comment here on Charles's warm coffee mug pad. Yeah, those are nice, for sure. Although I made a personal policy a long time ago, no open coffee mugs ever again on my desk. So once you've had a couple of coffee spills, that turn all your Post-its brown and any utility bills, or tax papers brown, you know, you'll make the decision no more open coffee cups ever again. And so what I use now is the those stainless steel air gap coffee mugs. That the air gap is your thermal insulation there. Let's see. Let's see what pulls up. Yeah, like one of the, yeah, there you go. I got one basically like this, right? It's, go away. There's an inside stainless steel shell, so there's an air gap on the edge. And yeah, I'm a true believer in these. Thankfully, I got it as a gift. I never would have thought of using these because you can't stick it in a microwave. That was my thought. But actually, these things literally keep your coffee warm for a minimum of 4 hours. The only time it ever gets cold is because I leave just a little bit of coffee at the bottom, right? And there's not enough liquid to keep it warm anymore. But, if you've got a half full cup, it stays warm for 4 hours. So I never have to microwave my coffee anymore, unless I'm just trying to hold on to like the last few sips, right? And yeah, so this is what I use, and it has these nice lids here. They're not perfectly spill proof, but good enough that, right, it doesn't saturate the papers that might be on your desk. And so any spillage would be very, very minimal, and no more having to heat up my coffee like I used to have to do all the time. Yeah, so that's my solution there. Yeah, I did think about getting one of those thermal pads, but I kind of realized, well, I don't want to violate my open coffee mug policy anymore. So so I just stuck with the, I used to have a plastic one that I had to heat up all the time because, the plastic ones just don't work as well as these sealed stainless steel ones, these air gap stainless steel ones do. So, yeah. All right. Anyways, just thought I would pass along my tip there with that. And let's see here. Double insulated. Yeah, the stainless steel ones, they're not double insulated. They're just, it just has an inner lining and an air gap, I guess is the correct way to say it. Yeah. Let's see. A battery, right? Yeah, battery sounds overboard, especially once you've experienced, that stainless steel with the air gap. Yeah, literally, I remember one time I just forgot to drink my coffee, and it was almost all full, and it was still warm after 4 hours. It wasn't hot, but it was plenty warm. To be drinking for coffee, so I didn't even need to microwave it after 4 hours. So after that, I was a true believer in using these. So, okay, guys. Well, with that little tip, everybody have a good weekend. And as usual, keep those questions coming. You can always email those questions in. So Melry, I do appreciate you emailing your question in. So that way I could email you back with a couple of clarification questions. So it's always helpful for both of us. So, okay, guys, I think that should do it. And so with that, have a good weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, guys.